Hey Bluffdale, my name is Jeff Steele and I'm running for City Council. Now I've lived here for a few years now, and over that time I've just been a little disappointed with some of the decisions and the direction that the city has been going. So that's why I decided to run. And actually today I want to tell you about the three main issues that I want to focus on and help fix. The first one is taxes. Did you know that Utah has the highest tax burden of any Republican state in the country? And when you compare us to all the other states, we're 14th highest overall, just after Massachusetts. So this is obviously a problem that goes from the state capital to our school districts, and yes, even is a problem here in Bluffdale. Did you know that Bluffdale has raised property taxes or fees 3 times since 2017? Now, if you're like me, you're wondering, why is it in such a booming economy where we have businesses coming to Bluffdale here, we have tons of new residences, and taxes are higher than they've probably ever been before in the history of our city? Why is it that we don't have enough money? Well, just like the rest of our state and the rest of our country, it's a spending problem. See, in Bluffdale, whenever we have a project or a new thing that we want to develop and we don't have enough money, the city historically has just relied on taxes to kind of fix their budget. Now, like you and me, if we're running a business or we are taking care of our personal finances, if we're ever short some money for something that we want, we can't just go out and demand that money from somebody else. We actually have to be careful with our spending and prioritize and make sure that we're using it in the right way. And this is a big problem with our current city right now, is that they often just rely on these tax increases to fix their budget problems instead of focusing on the spending and getting that right. So if I can get on the city council with your help, I would definitely make sure we get back to our conservative fiscal roots as a state and as a city and help tackle the spending problem that we have. Now, problem number 2 is actually similar, but also really, really important, and that's spending priorities. See, over these last few years, if you know anything about what's going on in the city, you've also heard that we've actually had some budget shortages in some of our most important areas of the city, like the fire department. Now again, if you're like me, you're wondering, how is it that a city is growing and thriving and getting all this new tax revenue? How do we not have enough money for the fire department? Which, as we all know, is the most critical service, along with the police, that the city can offer. Well, again, this is a spending priority problem. See, over that same time period, actually since our fiscal year 18, the city's Parks and Rec budget has gone from about $500,000 per year, which is a pretty good amount, and then till today, where the city is projecting the next budget would be a $2 million Parks and Rec budget per year. So obviously during this time, we've had plenty of money to grow our parks department and some of the other departments and hire lots of people and raise salaries and increase our wages in lots of other areas, but somehow we don't have enough for the fire department? Well, this is obviously the intentional way that the city has planned their money. They like to focus on these nice to have things like parks and the Parks and Rec stuff, which is great, but they spend the money in these other areas and then make it look like we don't have enough for the critical services. And of course, that's when they use taxes to say, hey guys, if you don't give us our tax increases, we're not going to have enough money for the fire department. But in reality, the problem is the prioritization. So when I'm on the city council, that's the number one thing I want to fix. And I will make sure that we have a system and a process in place where we actually fund the fire and police budgets to the appropriate amount first. Before any other departments get their budget, the police and fire will have their money. And then we can talk about what do we have left and what else do we have to fund so that we can have the right prioritization. So that's issue number 2. Issue number 3. Over the last few years, I also feel like the city has kind of gotten away from listening to the majority of residents. See, back in 2022, when the city was putting in place a new property tax, there was a pretty good group of residents, of concerned citizens that spoke out, went to the meetings, told them that this is not something that they want, and tried to work with the city. But the city moved forward, unfortunately, and put a tax increase into the budget. Well, that triggered a referendum, and that led to a vote for the whole city. And actually what happened was almost 70% of the residents voted to overturn that property tax increase. It was extremely unpopular. Well, you probably think, okay, well, the city probably then decided, okay, taxes are not going to be that popular and they're not going to do that again. Well, unfortunately, the very next year, they put that same or very similar property tax increase back into the budget. Now, that group of citizens, and myself included this time, worked really closely with them and told them, hey, we do not want this. We don't want to raise taxes. We want to find other solutions. We went to city council meetings. We offered ideas. And still, they moved forward with their property tax increase. And of course, there was another referendum. And of course, a majority of the residents of Bluffdale voted against that property tax increase, and it was overturned. So now you're thinking, okay, 2 times, they learned their lesson. They're not going to wrong. In the third year, well, this time they didn't do a property tax increase. This time they put a fee in place to help raise some of the money that they needed. But it just went to, showed me that the city wasn't really there to listen to the majority of the residents and listen to what they want. To me, it seems like the city has always kind of had its own agenda and its own initiatives that, are more serving of the city and not necessarily what everybody wants. So if I can get on the city council, that's one thing I definitely want to change, is make sure that your voice is heard and your initiatives are the most important thing to me. If there's an issue that I actually don't agree with but feel like the residents want, I'll be humble enough to make sure that your voice is still heard, and I vote with that majority even if I disagree. Listening to the residents is so critical, and I feel like we've lost that a little bit in Bluffdale. So those are the 3 reasons and the main issues that I want to focus on if I get into the city council. And I hope you'll support me making this a more responsible city when it comes to our finances, and try to make it more fiscally conservative in the future. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.